Welcome to Widemindedness with Victoria Ball, the podcast in which I interview expert guests who want to join me in celebrating that life is not black and white. Our society is increasingly divided, and the us versus them mentality seems to dominate our conversations and relationships with others. I believe that life is much richer when we widen our minds to consider multiple opinions and perspectives. So challenge your assumptions and let's become truly wide-minded together. Florence Bavanandan trained as a classical singer and toured extensively throughout the UK as well as Europe and Asia. She undertook session work for the BBC and Channel 4 and has recorded numerous times at Abbey Road Studios. She began to realise that she was miserable and anxious and set up a business developing young artists in the patriarchal world of pop. Here she found that she was often spoken over, ignored, interrupted and disregarded. She delved into feminist literature and found some strong female role models and started to employ the techniques she had used to hold space on a stage to hold space in the boardroom. As a result, she founded Clear Voice as a place where women can inspire other women to be confident in their voices and to be heard. So far, Clear Voice has helped over 1,000 people to find and use their voices through the Clear Voice podcast, coaching, workshops and webinars, with the smallest startups through to multinationals such as Apple. Hello, Florence!
Hello! Thank you for having me. I love this podcast. So I'm so excited to talk all things wide-mindedness. And it always makes me think about so much stuff.
I also love your podcast, Clear Voice. Can you just tell my listeners a little bit about the podcast?
Yeah, so I realised that I had a massive deficit of female role models in my life and a variety of role models, really. Because, I think we're surrounded by women all the time, but depending on where you are, where you're from, your lifestyle, your job, you may not have a variety and you may not have inspiration in areas of your life that you need it. My mum, for example, is an amazing woman. Like, she raised 4 children and is a proper homemaker, but that doesn't help me with how to be a woman in business. So I think we can learn so much from female role models. And also I was being silenced a lot and I felt that I was silencing myself and it was hard to find my own voice. So I created a podcast where I could talk to women who are successful about how they found their voices, how did they get there, what challenges did they have, and then how they're using them for change now. And it's been amazing. And every episode is so different because all these women are so diverse. And every time I meet someone else who is incredible and inspirational, and your episode is amazing. So Victoria is one of the more recent guests. And, it's just brilliant to be able to meet all these women and ask them all the questions that you want to ask. Because I think we're presented with such trailblazing women, but there's always a question about, but how did you get there? So to be able to ask those questions.
I know that you inspire women to grow in confidence, to find their own voice and to be heard. Have you found that you have needed to be quite wide-minded in your approach to life and work in response to those sort of quite traditional gender stereotypes that surround us?
Absolutely. And I think that is part of what sort of with the wave of feminism that we're in at the moment is about. I think, second wave feminism was all about you have to be this kind of woman if you want to be free. And that's stuff like not wearing lipstick, not shaving. And it's like very the sort of archetype of a militant feminist. And there wasn't space because they were fighting such a fight. There wasn't space for a sort of a diverse range of women there. But now, feminism is about, I talk about my mom. My mom's a feminist. She's chosen to have that life and that's what she wants and that's how she has success. Madame Storm is an international dominatrix and she was one of my more recent guests and she's amazing and she, that's how she lives her life. And she said that, she had to think about who am I? And she was trying to be someone else and be an acceptable woman, but she doesn't want to be like that. She wants to be who she is and that is a dominatrix. So I think, being wide-minded about what feminism means to other people and how we can all be feminists and live together. And then I also think about being wide-minded about what we can achieve that way and fighting for all those women's feminism, not just our singular feminism.
And I think what you're saying is find your own way of being a feminist. I think that one of the challenges that we face when we're trying to find our own unique voice is being afraid to speak out in a sea of voices that sometimes appear to be saying the same thing.
That is even more of a problem now. We have so many echo chambers. We live in echo chambers. And so, for example, we're in the middle of the big Black Lives Matter movement, and my Facebook is majority, 99%, that Black Lives Matter, and there are a couple of people who are saying, oh, all lives matter. They are in a safe space in their Facebook that they feel like that's an opinion that they can put out there. I think articulation and education is key. It's something that you do so well with Widemindedness. It's all about finding out what other people are saying, and what you think, and educating yourself so that then you can articulate your true opinion. Because I think so much of the time we have that feeling inside of ourselves that we want to be able to say something, and intrinsically we know something is wrong, or we know something is right, or we want something, for example, a pay rise. We don't quite know how to do it. So being wide-minded about it, asking other people, like, what are you earning? What do you think about this? And then thinking, okay, they think that. What do I think? Doing research and then forming your own opinion.
I agree with you that to have a well-formed opinion, you need to ask people. You need to do your research. You need to listen to what the other side might think.
Yeah, and the only way you're ever going to make any change in the world is if you're talking to people that don't think the same as you. You need to get out there, talk to people, make progress, run that marathon of change.
Do you think groupthink is something that you see examples of in the fields you're working in? And, how do you think we might go about combating it?
Yes, a lot of the work I do is because I'm working with quite male-dominated companies that see that groupthink could be a problem for them, and they want to encourage the women to speak up. Just by adding one woman to your board, you can grow. Most companies grow by 3.7% within a year. So, I think fostering a company culture of diversity, and not tokenistic diversity, really encouraging that kind of breadth of thought and wide-mindedness. If you're someone that is in a position to put that forward in your company and to create that culture, I would start doing it microcosmically first. So start with your family and your friends, and like having those kind of wide-minded conversations and seeing how it works there and how you might need to mediate them, and then taking it into work.
What does the workshop look like when you go in to work with a company?
So everything I do is all based on opera, and it's based on play and performance. So a lot of it is singing. But it's all equally, as I said, working softly. So we start and everyone's seated, and it's like a normal corporate training session. So it's like very much comfort zone. And then I will sing, at which point people start to twig. They're like, oh, okay, this is not what I thought I'd signed up for. But, it's quite cool. And then we'll talk about whatever we're going to talk about, which can be anything. It can be something like, how do I interject in a conversation? How do I find my voice? How do I find my personal rhetoric? Personal brand is a really big thing within the corporate sector, especially with grads. There's suddenly a lot of pressure to find your personal brand. And then we would do singing. And that's all about, like, within 20 minutes, we're singing in 3-part harmony. It's an amazing moment. It's just, when that happens, it's such a powerful moment. The power of everyone singing together, achieving something within the first third of a workshop that people, A, didn't know they were going to do, and did not know that they could do, and a lot of the time didn't think they could ever do. Being wide-minded and exploring things that you didn't know were possible, that can add so much.
So you've worked in the classical world and then in the pop world before moving into business. In those different environments, have you come across different ways of thinking?
Yeah, I think different ways of thinking, different ways of being, different ways of dressing, different ways of talking, completely different ways of life. And it's about being true to yourself and finding out who you are, but equally learning from these other places. It's a constant dance of how much of myself do I bring, and how much newness do I learn? And for me, that's great, and I find it really challenging and exciting.
Yeah, and that is what gives you to take a business phrase, your USP. Your unique selling point is the particular pattern and patchwork of experiences that are unique to you. I just wanted to jump in here and say that if you're enjoying this episode, and indeed any of the episodes in the series, please do hop on over to victoria-ball.com and sign up to the monthly newsletter to get more Wide-Minded content. You can also follow me on Instagram at Widemindedness Victoria Ball. Please make sure you do, and rate, review and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on so that others get to know about this Wide-Mindedness podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the journey with me. Now, back to Florence. Now, you introduced me to the word hierarchies. Am I saying that correctly?
I still don't know. It was originally coined by Elizabeth Schussler Florences. She's a divinity professor at Harvard. And what it does, it's a term that takes patriarchy, extends the patriarchy to encompass all the other hierarchies of oppression. So be that racism, ableism, capitalism, homophobia, and it's about where all the systems of oppression intersect with each other. We have to be really wide-minded about what we're fighting for and how we're using our voices. And if we're looking for change, if the change that we're seeking and the change that we're making, is it benefiting the most amount of people? And more importantly, is it, by creating change for one group, are we oppressing another? I think that sometimes we don't necessarily think wide-mindedly about that. I'm also encouraging white women who have a spotlight and a privilege to extend that privilege to Black women, trans women, lesbian women, so really thinking about breaking down all those systems of oppression rather than just the one that affects you most.
As well as running your own business, being this super feminist coach and female founder, you're beautiful and happily married. Now, it sometimes feels to me like we feel like we ought to have one role or another in life. And, especially as women, I think we're often cautioned, you can't have it all.
As women, we have so many expectations weighed on our shoulders by society of be desirable and be beautiful, but don't be sexy. Or do be sexy, but not too sexy. And you should be a mother, but don't work. Like, you shouldn't rely on your partner. It's just... You can listen to all these things, you're like, I just don't know what to do anymore. So social editing is that, for example, you have two parents and they give their son and daughter completely equal opportunities, but the mother makes sure that the father is, as soon as he gets in from work, he gets to put his feet up, has a cup of tea, don't speak, daddy's talking or daddy's here, and you kind of put that social editing of the man as the most important person, and that the women are there to help with the man. So I grew up in quite a traditional way, and it's really interesting for me to go back and sort of retrospectively question that and examine how I work in my life now. And then I think the concept of having it all is such an interesting one, because flipping it, do men have it all? I don't think that they do, in the way that we expect women to want to have it all, or to have it all. To be a woman, you have to be married, have children, have an amazing job, and be able to do all three all the time. Yes. And so that's the concept of having it all, or what it is to me. And then if I think about, men that have it all generally aren't spending that much time at home, because you think about like that powerful man working with that same sort of equal power job. They can do that because they don't have it all either. So I think the concept of having it all is flawed, and I think it's something that is put upon women to make, as a kind of, it's something that we can never achieve. But it's equally something that I personally, of course, I want to achieve, which is so hard. Of thinking, how can I do this? How can I do that? But I think, we're in this kind of, as Daniel Priestley would say, this entrepreneur revolution where we have so many female founders and self-employed women. It gives us so much flexibility. As women working together against that and really trying to demystify having it all and what it means and how to be working women, and encouraging men to take part in that family life as well, I think is a good way to kind of break that down.
Something I've seen a lot of during coronavirus is I've sent emails to men and I've had out of offices that in the out of office email will now often include, I'm sorry if it takes a couple of days to get back to you, but we're both working at home and I'm taking care of our little one, was one that came recently. And I thought, wow, how refreshing. I mean, that would not have happened, I don't think, before lockdown. When I talk about wide-mindedness, I say that communication is key. And that is obviously something you're an expert in. Physically training your voice as an opera singer, and then empowering people to use their voices. when trying to engage with people and learn from them, it's obviously really vital on a nuts and bolts level that we can communicate with them. I wanted to ask you before you go, if you could give us some top tips for people who struggle to find their voice in work or social settings.
Oh, absolutely. So firstly, break things down. Break it down. Start small. If you struggle to find your voice, and I think a key example is when you're in that kind of group setting where everyone's introducing themselves and saying all the amazing achievements that they've had in your life, and suddenly you're like, oh, I am worthless. Literally, have I ever done anything? Plan what you're going to say. Plan it, write it down, especially now we're doing so much stuff online. Have a little post-it on the side of your laptop so that you can just look at and read it off there, so that you break it down. You're not thinking about what you have to say. You can just focus on the act of speaking and of communicating, and you do your thinking beforehand. And then you build up that skill of being like, thinking, I can hold this space and I can communicate with my voice. And then you bring back in your thinking and your creativity in that moment. So strengthening those two muscles individually.
So it's creating a bridge almost into that conversation.
Absolutely, exactly. And then we were actually talking about this earlier about looking at yourself, and there's been so much research into the science around power poses and how if you stand in the mirror for 3 minutes, hold with your hands on your hips, or like in a Superman pose, you actually change your body chemistry and your cortisol goes down, and the hormones that make you feel like you're really about to nail the situation, they rise. And it's something that now in this sort of more modern world of technology and video calls, what we don't realize is that we're essentially looking in a mirror all the time. So making sure that what's looking back at you is something that you feel really confident about. So if you're someone that wears makeup, or if you're someone that feels great in a suit, you want to make sure that you're doing this power pose essentially for an hour, and it can be really empowering or it could be really disempowering. You can be looking at yourself for an hour and thinking, God, I look awful, and who is this person? Or you can be looking at yourself for an hour and be like, I am the lady, and and it can really bolster what you're doing. So just making yourself in the most confident place possible.
That's such a great tool, and you're completely right to extend those communication tips into physical stuff, vocal stuff, mental stuff. Communication, people I often think is just about, what physically comes out of your mouth, but actually you're so right. It's an emotional, mental thing. It's a physical thing. There's so many things being triggered to boost to that. Really what you're talking about is confidence in communication.
Absolutely. I think confidence is the key of it, because if you think about it, if I had the cure for cancer or the cure for AIDS, I would not hesitate in telling everyone about it, because I feel so confident about it, and it wouldn't be, it's not a problem. But when we bring in all the stuff around, will people judge me? Like, how do I feel about this? And what will they think? It all falls away. So coming back to yourself and really feeling like, you know what, I'm good at what I do, and I know what I have to say, then the rest of it is so much easier.
I think that's so true. And actually, for a wide-minded society, the more each of us do that on a personal level, the more we're actually training each other to listen to different voices as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So finally, just in a couple of lines, I'd really love to ask you why wide-mindedness is important for you.
So for me, it's essential to everything I do. I'm creatively solving problems by taking, as you say, all the experience from the corners of my life of classical and pop and corporate. And it's at the core of my business is taking one problem and then taking ingredients from all those other places and solving it using those. And then being a feminist, listening to what other feminists are going through, and then also listening to people who don't believe in feminism and who are anti-feminist and their problems with that, and then forming my own opinions and being able to speak out against that. So, it's a real core of everything. And also, I just find it fascinating. I love talking to people and finding out about what they're doing and who they are. And for me, as a human being, it's just amazing to be able to connect with people on that level.
And that's, at the end of the day, what we all are. We're human beings. And if we can be wide-minded enough to interact with other human beings, I think there's an awful lot to learn and benefit from. Florence Bavanandan, thank you so much for joining me. It has been enlightening and eye-opening, just an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Widemindedness with Victoria Ball. Help others learn about it by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. For more great wide-minded content, follow at Widemindedness Victoria Ball on Instagram, at Widemindedness on Twitter, and sign up to the monthly newsletter at victoria-ball.com.